Hello everyone, I'm Julian Ma. I'm a researcher at the Robust Incentive Group within the Ethereum Foundation. We usually look at mechanism design for the Ethereum protocol, so think of problems like ERP 1559 and proposer builder separation. And today I'd like to talk about Ethereum's role in the cross-domain world. First of all, I would also like to thank Altlayer for hosting this session, and I hope it will be very informative. So if I'm thinking about Ethereum's role in the cross-domain world, the first thing that pops up to me is how proposer-builder separation is really a design philosophy and not necessarily what we think of it in its current form. So many of you will probably know its current form of MEV Boost, which is the out-of-protocol software that Flashbots developed and is currently used by large sets of the validator sets, and it allows proposers to connect to builders who build the entire blocks, and then proposers reap the benefits of this. So it allows everyone to get the same benefits of sophistication. However, proposer builder separation is actually way broader than this. In general, it allows any outsourcing of protocol duties that proposers may have to third parties in order to fulfill these duties. So, in essence, PBS or proposer builder separation means that a proposer who is tasked to perform certain duties by the Ethereum protocol may have a desire to outsource some of these duties for whatever reason this may be. So in the case of block construction, this might be because constructing a good block is very intensive work and it requires a high degree of sophistication. So what the proposer could do is they could draft up a contract that outsources this job to a builder, and there where we see a builder as an out-of-protocol agent that's sophisticated and rational and has the ability to fulfill this job well. And then PBS really refers to the formation of this contract. So in MEV-Boost, it may be that the contract has the form that the builder makes the entire block, but as we'll see throughout this presentation, and we've seen in the literature, there could actually be different forms of this contract. So as a quick recap to get everyone on the same floor, so where are we now? MEV-Boost is the current out-of-protocol instantiation of PBS, so it's not actually proposer-builder separation. Proposer-builder separation or enshrined PBS is something that we're working towards. MEV-Boost allows proposers to outsource block construction to builders, as we've just seen through this contract, and thereby gives all of the proposers the same access to sophistication. So this ensures that there's still decentralization of the validator set, because there's no incentive to co-locate with searchers or with builders, as we would have probably seen otherwise. However, it does come with a few challenges. For example, there are lots of trusted components now in MEV Boost, meaning that there could be some liveness issues or unbundling attacks like we've seen. And in the process of MEV Boost, they define a very rigid contract, which is the block auction. So as I just stated, the MEV Boost says that a builder can make an entire block for a proposer. So they don't give you the option, for example, to build half a block, to build blocks in different ways. They define a very solid footing for what the form of this contract must be. And then a logical question to ask is if this is the optimal form of the contract. This is something that we'll explore further in this talk. The idea about whether this is the perfect form for the format or not comes from Barnabé. He's the team lead at the Robust Incentives Group, and I've linked his post in the bottom left corner of the slides here. I'll also share the slides afterwards, and these are actually clickable. So if you're interested in any of the links here, you can click on the slides and go through the links yourself. So the idea that there may be a different format of the contract that might be more ideal for certain situations is referred to as the allocation mechanism of PBS. So what the allocation mechanism means is that the protocol facilitates certain proposer commitments. So for example, in the case of MEV-Boost, MEV-Boost facilitates that proposers commit that a builder can build the entire block. If we were to enshrine PBS, the Ethereum protocol would facilitate this commitment, but there could be other commitments. And then there's the market structure, which means that the proposed protocol provides safety guarantees around this commitment. So, for example, that the proposer will honor this commitment and also that the payments from, for example, the builder are enforced. Some other forms that could be interesting for PBS are actually related to cross-domain MEV. So what form of the proposer builder separation contract would be the best for a cross-domain world? This is what we'll be looking at as a protocol designer. So first of all, we need to consider whether this is even the protocol's concern. Putting stuff into the protocol is quite a heavy-duty task. It will take a lot of time, and once it's in, it's very difficult to change. So the protocol is a very rigid mechanism, and it's not easy to change. And also, it doesn't have a view of a lot of things. For example, currently, it doesn't see what the block production process is like. This is also the reason why MEV-Boost exists, because the Ethereum protocol currently doesn't see how blocks are constructed. It's possible that proposers outsource this task to builders, and the protocol isn't aware of many other things. For example, the protocol isn't aware of what the state is on other domains, or whether there's even coordination between these kind of domains. And the question is whether the protocol should be aware of all of these things or not. An advantage of being aware means that there's less likely to be a principal agent problem. For example, in the case of where the principal, in this case the protocol, does not align with the incentives of the agents. So let's say that the agents are not aligned with decentralization or other factors like this. But an advantage of the protocol not being aware is that there could be out-of-protocol software spun up that would allow for coordination mechanisms. So we see a lot of experimentation in this field, and this is probably where other talks will be centered around today. Another question that we're concerned with within the EF is whether these kind of solutions should be enshrined or not, and also what the options are. So this is something that we'll go through. So why would cross-domain coordination mechanisms be a concern for the Ethereum protocol? Well, I'd like to define 3 things that I see as important. First of which is allocative efficiency. And with this I mean that is block space used to reach the social welfare maximizing state? For example, we could see that if we're not aware of any coordination of any coordination between domains, it could be that we use state in a way that doesn't optimize for what could have happened if we had the right coordination mechanisms. Which brings me to point 2. Are there actually applications that could benefit from cross-domain coordination mechanisms that we currently do not have? And my third point is informational efficiency. Informational efficiency refers to whether all available information is incorporated into the protocol or not. This is a somewhat softer point. So, for example, you could see in arbitrage between a centralized exchange like Binance and a decentralized exchange like Uniswap, we could ask the question whether all of the information about price movements or about tokens in general is incorporated into the decentralized exchange or not. And this would probably mean some more effective use for users because they would be trading at the price where all information is incorporated and not at some more outdated price. Okay. And then a side question for this is, can we achieve the same level of allocative efficiency, of coordination and informational efficiency if the solutions are out of protocol and if they're in protocol? We'll start with soft pre-confirmations, which is an out of protocol solution. And you can see again that this is a hyperlink, so you can click on it and it will redirect you to a slideshow by Alex Stokes, who has thought about this a lot. So soft pre-confirmations are an example of builder services, which means that a builder provides a trusted service to users to guarantee certain things. So in the case of pre-confirmations, they could either guarantee that your transaction will be included, maybe in a certain range of blocks, maybe in the next block that they win, or whatever inclusion guarantee that they're willing to sell, and a user is willing to buy, of course. And moreover, a stronger form of soft pre-commitments could be that they would give you a confirmation on the post state of your transaction. So they could give you, for example, exactly how much balance you have of ETH and of some other tokens after this transaction. These could be very helpful things because it would allow you to act on this information, act on the fact that you know something is going to happen on it. The only problem though is that these soft pre-confirmations are based on the fact of, given that the builder wins the PBS auction, they will honor their commitments. So it could very well be the case that the builder doesn't win the PBS auction. And to prevent this, a user would actually want a guarantee, would need to go to multiple builders and buy these sort of pre-confirmations to get guarantees. And this may be this might need a coordination mechanism in itself, and could be very centralizing actually. So we might need something that goes beyond this. The advantage of having such a pre-confirmation though is that it allows users to act with this guarantee on other domains, and we'll see this power with an example later on. And then something that I'm very excited about is slot auctions, which is an enshrined version, which could also yield some pre-confirmations basically. And again, this is a clickable link. So we've seen that the MEV boost mechanism determines a contract form where you can sell the entire block and people bid based on their block. So this is what we see on the left hand side. We see a block auction and builders, they bid and their bid is for this specific block. So the builder has built the block already, and if they win, this block will be included. A slot auction is slightly different from this in the sense that builders bid, but they don't necessarily build the block in advance. They would probably make some estimates of the value and bid based on this, but it could be the case that they would actually only build their block after they know they won. So this is a different form of the contract that we've seen, which is the essence of PBS, and this is also why PBS is really a design philosophy. Slot auctions fall into the allocation mechanism of PBS, and so they're quite different from block auctions. Again, for more depth, I would recommend you to click on the link here. Some of the consequences of slot auctions are that the difference between the commitment time and the execution time, which is the commitment time refers to the time at which you made your block. So, for example, in the block auctions part, we saw that the block was already made at the time of the bid, and the execution time refers to the time when the block is published. So now, because the auction has to happen between the time of commitment and the time of execution in a block auction, there's a large gap between this. And if the auction happens before this and your commitment time and execution time are then very, very close. And the obvious benefit of this is latency reductions. So we see now that in arbitrage between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, latency becomes very important. And we've observed this in high frequency trading in traditional finance as well, obviously. This is one of the obvious advantages of slot auctions, but another maybe more subtle advantage is that block content can now be made conditional on guarantee of inclusion. So intuitively, this doesn't seem to make very much sense. So in principle, you always make your block contents conditional on inclusion, because if you're not included, the block contents aren't relevant. So they wouldn't be executed anyway. So you would make them conditional on inclusion. And this is something that some people have dived into, and there was a paper written on MEV invariance stating that the cake doesn't grow, so the MEV pie doesn't grow, if Ethereum would implement conditional block building, basically, relative to centralized exchanges. And the caveat here is that centralized exchanges would also have guaranteed inclusion, and you can basically always commit to them. So instead of there being a blockchain where there are discrete commitment times, and there would be continuous commitment times. So an open question still is what would happen to the overall cake of MEV if you're dealing with two blockchains that both have discrete times and also both have probabilistic inclusion. So this is still an open question, so if anyone is working on this, I would love to hear about that. And then a separate question is whether we should enshrine or not. So currently there's been a debate about whether we should enshrine PBS or not. And there's an article written by Mike Noyder with some arguments in favor and some arguments against. Some arguments in favor are that out-of-protocol software like MevBoost could be quite brittle, and there could be some dangerous factors in this for the protocol. So, for example, he refers to the equivocation attacks that we've seen from the low-carb Crusader, and potential liveness issues with relays if their software isn't implemented correctly. However, a very important factor here that he also points out is that if we implement the wrong market mechanism and allocation mechanism, we could be sort of stuck with this because it would be very difficult to change. So if we implement the wrong contract form of the PBS design philosophy into Ethereum, so we move from a philosophy into one specific field. For example, we use the contract form that MevBoost imposed. It could be that this isn't optimal for our future. So it could be that if we use the contract form that MevBoost imposed, there's less coordination possible for cross-domain commitments, because we don't, for example, have slot auctions or other forms of PBS that would allow for more coordination. And to point this out, I'd like to use one example. So here I've taken a cross-domain arbitrage from the paper Unity is Strength, the formalization of cross-domain maximum extractable value. And we see that we need to do both on Ethereum and on Polygon. We need to do a swap, and this will net us some profit. So let's take this to a more an easier setting. Let's say that the total profit from this swap, in this case it says something like 111,000 US dollars. Let's say for a very simple case it's just 100, and we need to pay fees on both chains. So in this case we're first working on Ethereum and then we're working on Polygon. Let's say that we need to pay 30 US dollars, so that's 30% of our profits to Ethereum to get our transaction included. We need to do this first, and then we can only move to Polygon, where we will see if our transaction can get included there. So now we paid 30, and then we move to Polygon, and there we don't only pay more than 70. However, the problem is that a rational arbitrager would actually be willing to pay up to 100, because the 30 before are sunk cost. So the best that you could do, if the Polygon validators are not willing to accept 70, is to bid up to 100. And this could actually be a difficult problem, because in this case you're actually running a loss if your profit is only 100. So the fact that you could potentially be running a loss, even though there should be some arbitrage opportunity, means that it could potentially not be exploited. What if someone is actually setting up these kinds of traps in order to get people to pay more? And similar problems. You could imagine that people just don't want to deal with this kind of stuff. So this is really where you see the power of pre-confirmations or slot auctions. What it could do is, for example, if you have the power to determine what's going to happen in the next state transition, you could you have the pre-confirmation basically, and you could act on Polygon first, bidding there, and only if this part goes well, you can do your transaction on Ethereum. Meaning that you don't have this problem anymore where potentially someone could hold out from selling an arbitrage opportunity to you on the second domain because they know that you're willing to bid more and they know that you're willing to run a loss. So this would prevent loss, and it would allow for some sort of cross-domain atomicity. And because of this, we see that there's a gain in informational efficiency if this arbitrage opportunity does become possible, because suddenly there's more information incorporated into prices on both domains. We see that there's an increase in allocative efficiency because the MEV that represents some sort of contention is now actually extracted, and block space is used to drive up this contention and gets us to a more socially welfare maximizing state. And this is possible because of the cross-domain coordination mechanism. So these are the three things that I pointed out before. So please keep that in mind if you think about cross-domain coordination. So should we wait and research this more? Well, there are some reasons to wait to prevent to immediately go ahead and prevent some of these attacks. But implementing the wrong thing means that we could be stuck with the incorrect contract formats. And Pepsi, which is a post from Barnaby again, proposer and protocol enforced proposer commitments, really dives into this allocation mechanism and market design. So I'd recommend everyone to read that. And then finally, some interesting ideas that are there is the nuclear button idea that I heard Phil Dyan talk about, which decreases the investment efficiency of certain potential extraction techniques. Basically, what it does is it says that since we could always implement some mechanism like PBS, it would be unwise for people to invest in certain very extracting techniques, because if certain very extractive techniques become very profitable, we would use this nuclear button and insert PBS. So these are some of the ideas that I'd like to leave you off with. And as a conclusion, we need to be very careful about considering whether Ethereum should be aware of cross-domain coordination, and this remains an open question. The out-of-protocol solutions may fix some things, like the holdout problem that I showed you before, which was also solved by the in-protocol solutions, but they require some trusted role and maybe some extra coordination mechanisms. But in general, allowing for cross-domain extraction might increase allocative efficiency of block space, informational efficiency of prices, and expand the possible mechanisms that we can use for our applications. So the open research question that we'll be working on is what the value of slot auctions are in the case of overlapping commitment times of blockchains and non-overlapping commitment times of blockchains, how soft pre-confirmations could actually work, and whether Ethereum should enshrine these cross-domain coordination mechanisms or not. So thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And again, thank you for Outlayer for hosting this session. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.